What is the potential of this crisis for the emergence of a 21st century economy? I'm Shinta Oosterwaal, economist and executive team coach, and I'm asking forward thinkers, seers and doers, what now? Hi Kees, good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
My pleasure.
Kees, you are the absolute frontrunner of the purpose economy in the Netherlands. You're the author of 5 books, all pertaining in their own way to unconventional ideas about the economy. As such, you're also a much in demand speaker. And you're the founder of Thrive Institute, a think tank to reinvent business and society.
Yes.
So thank you so much for talking to me today about what I am really curious about, your ideas for the potential that underlie this crisis.
Well, in my humble opinion, the crisis is one big reality check. Yeah? And it depends on whether you see a reality check as something positive or something negative in the way that you perceive and deal with it. But it is nevertheless one big reality check. Yeah? So we have the incident of Corona starting in Wuhan with a bed that leaked some material, body fluids on another animal, which made its way into human life. Mm-hmm. But underlying that incident, of course, is a crisis of humankind as a species in relationship with all the other living species on the planet, and I think we know this, and we know this for decades, maybe even longer. But what we needed was something to really put an end to our possibilities to escape that reality. And I think Corona does just that. It makes it impossible for us to deny our problematic relationship with the living systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does so through quite a lot of suffering, right? We were just, before recording this conversation, talking about how much suffering there is among entrepreneurs, for example.
Yes, suffering. The suffering is very real and very hard, and also harsh. But that's also part of the reality. So one of the things that has really striking me over the years is that if you look at supporters of the current wealth system, which focuses on the positivity of economic growth and wealth accumulation, mm-hmm. You always hear those great positive stories about how wealth bettered the world, how wealth created jobs and opportunities for millions, billions of people, and helped to create humanity forward. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, that is a truth. The only problem is it's half of the truth. Mm-hmm. So what we've always done is focusing on that part of the truth, and we completely deny the other part of the truth, which is also as real as the positive side, but which is about the dark side, mm-hmm. of wealth accumulation. Yeah? So. Mm-hmm. For the last decades, our economy has grown with 2.5% yearly from an average, which means that our economy is 100% bigger than it was 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, it was 100% bigger than 30 years before that, which is ridiculous if you think about it. So we've become tremendously richer. But with that growing wealth, there has also been an enormous decrease in well-being. So our economic growth and wealth growth has come together with environmental degradation, with damaging the biosphere, and also from a social sphere's perspective. yes, the top line of the economy has grown, and yes, we see multiple countries where GDP has grown, and thus we say, you know, these countries are doing well. But if you look a little bit deeper, the situation in those countries haven't bettered really from a fundamental perspective, because the wealth that has been acquired has been concentrated by a smaller and smaller group of people. Like Piketty, of course, has written about so eloquently in his books. So we as humans, we have the tendency to only look at the positive, pleasurable side of things because it makes us feel good. But there is always also the dark side, and I think one of the truths and importance of this current crisis is that it makes it impossible to only look at the sunny positive side of things. It forces us to take the dark side serious. And yes, that's painful, but I also think it's the biggest present we have ever received as humanity.
Yeah. You just mentioned it as the sunny side. So economic growth was one half of the story that was meant to be a positive half.
Yes.
I think, as it turns out now, it might be the negative half, right? The darker side.
Oh yes.
So the positives, or the hopeful side, or the opportunities side of it, is uncharted territory, because we are moving away from that paradigm if we continue this discussion.
Yes.
So what is the most essential to being able to move past that paradigm?
Acknowledging the fact that, for instance, in the Netherlands, but the Netherlands is an example of many other developed countries, that we are living in an overdeveloped society and economy. And we are very used to look from our perspective to underdeveloped countries and say, you guys have to economically grow in the next couple of years to become developed countries. But the fact is that the Netherlands is overdeveloped since the 1960s. So there has been extended research done by SCP, Sociaal Cultureel Planbureau, which is an institute in the Netherlands that works for the government and studies economic developments. And they've researched, and they've written a fantastic book about the subject that actually shows that if you look at the optimum situation in the Netherlands, look from a perspective of wealth and well-being meshing up in one big positive sum, is the 1960s. So until the 1960s, economic growth meant that also our general well-being was still growing. So that means that we were still a country in economic development. But from the 1960s, the wealth has been growing steadily, and well-being is going down, which is, and Katrina Trebek, founder of WHEEL, Well-Being Economy Alliance, and she's one of the people behind the transition that now New Zealand is in, and also Iceland and Scotland, moving from a GDP-oriented system towards GNH, gross national happiness, well-being economy. And she actually labeled this phenomena overdevelopment. So there is such a thing as overdevelopment. And overdevelopment means that economic growth doesn't help well-being, but hurts well-being. And that's problematic. That is a fact, and it's a problematic fact. And it means that we have to look at our current system in a dramatically different way.
Yeah, it lays bare the existential an existential challenge, because this is what we have believed in for such a long time. This is what we've
Yeah.
built our lives upon. This is what most of us have been born into. So questioning that, like you say, acknowledgement is the essential to move past this paradigm. Um, on a national scale, what leadership does that require?
That's a good question. Well, I think it needs leadership, uh, uh, which is comparable with Jacinda Ardern. She is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and I think she is the epitome of new leadership, where she takes the well-being of her country so serious that she's willing to go in a completely different direction, and she walks the talk. So she doesn't only sees the problems that her country is facing, but she is also accepting the fact that that means that they have to change the pace. And what is really important in this, and this of course is controversial because what you're saying is quite right. We are all born into a capitalist system, and we take the system as natural. It's the truth. But what we have to understand is that it's not natural; it's normal. So if you look, and Charles Eisenstein is one of the persons that has created a lot of thought and theory about this, is that underneath systems we have the stories, and the systems are only reflecting the stories we have created and that we believe in, and above the systems we have the symptoms, and the symptoms are basically happenings in the world that we try to explain from the perspective of a system. And we are all very much aware of the system, but a lot of us aren't aware that underneath that system is a story, and the story of the capitalist system is actually written down in Adam Smith's Wealth of a Nation, which is called, of course, is the part of the invisible hand, which says that the need and the demand for wealth of the few leads to well-being of the many. And this is the stuff we believe. So the reason why we are creating a system which is called capitalism, which demands economic growth, which needs depth, which needs winners and losers and all these elements, is the fact that we have a story that says, no, but we need wealth because wealth is well-being. And what we learn now is that the story is incorrect. Wealth is the enemy of well-being. It's not the foundation of well-being. It's the enemy. Because what we know by now is that wealth and economic growth creates climate change. It creates biodiversity loss. It creates social inequality. It creates soil degradation. It creates air pollution, plastic pollution. All the elements that are really, really, really problematic are created by our belief that we need to grow our wealth. So what I think and what I hope is that this crisis gives us the opportunity to check our story. And the toxicity of the normal that we've become so accustomed to is that we think that the enemy of capitalism is socialism. So you end up in discussions. The moment you start to criticize capitalism, you end up in a discussion with people accusing you of being a socialist. But the fact is that both socialism and capitalism are based upon the same stories. They just approach it from different angles. But also, socialism is capitalism, and capitalism is socialism. They are the same story. They're both based upon people that have and people that have not, people that possess and people that don't possess. What I think the new situation demands from us is that we lose the illusion of possession. We don't possess Mother Earth. We don't possess the biosphere. We don't possess the sea. We don't possess the airs. We don't possess the soil. We are part of the system. And we have to take care of the system. That's our role. Our role is not to possess. Our role is not to enrich ourselves. Our role is to enrich the quality of life.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Which is, by the way, my humble opinion. This is what I believe. This is my story.
There always comes a time in these interviews when people there's always a time in these interviews. Oh, sorry. There's always a time in these interviews when people get really feisty about something, and I love that moment. I love that moment. There's a couple of items that items that come up in my mind when you speak about that. First of all, you mentioned all the crises that are interrelated. So there's many of them, which points to the systemic crisis, of course. Now, that's one thing I really want to talk to you about, because I'm quite... lately, I've been concerned about why we do not approach this crisis in a systemic way, so approach the interrelation of crises. Then also the model you just mentioned about stories being underneath the structures, being underneath the symptoms that we perceive, is of course very relevant. I think it's very important information to be dealing with, because the public dialogue, the expert dialogue, the debates, they all focus on structures and maybe symptoms, and doing away with symptoms that are painful or uncomfortable. But hardly ever do we hear a public debate that challenges the story, that checks the story, as you just said. Maybe there is a public debate about that, but I haven't heard of it.
No.
So I'm really wondering, how can we get that moving? What's the entry, the point of departure to start talking about that story?
That's a very good question, and it's also it's a tough question, because I think one of the reasons why people find it so hard to acknowledge the fact that life is systematic, that life is a system, is the fact that it divides our ego. So we humans exist because we think that we are. So we all have the idea that we are unique individuals. And of course, don't get me wrong, we are individuals. I'm looking at an individual right now, and you're looking at an individual as well. So we need our ego. But one of the things that I've learned by being a Buddhist practitioner for the last 30 years is that there is a truth behind that truth. So yes, we are individuals, and yes, we have an ego, and we need that ego to survive. But as my Buddhist teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, taught me many years ago, is don't take that ego too serious. Don't take yourself, literally, don't take yourself too serious. It's just your ego. So if you are able to transcend that identity, that story about you being you, you can and will experience the systemic truth of life itself. So I think the best way I can explain it is the way that I've been taught this reality by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is he showed a flower, and a red flower, and he asked us in the Zendo what we saw, and we said, this is a flower, and he said, yeah, that's quite rightful, that's true, but can you see more? There's more to see. And so one of the practices said, I get it. You mean that the flower is red because it was a red flower. And I said, yes, that's true. It's also a red flower, but there's more. Can you see it? And then somebody remarked, you mean that it's not just a flower, but it's a flower that is made up of all elements, like a stem and leaves, and it's compartmentalized. And he said, yes, but there's even more. And then we became quiet because we didn't see anything else. We just saw the flower, which is made out of various elements. And then he asked, can you see the sun in the flower? And can you see the seed in the flower? And can you see the rain in the flower? And can you see the soil in the flower? And can you see the minerals in this flower? And he said, one thing is sure, that if there is no sun in this flower, there will be no flower. And no seed, no flower, no soil, no flower, no rain, no flower. So what you're looking at is not a flower, it's a manifestation of the whole universe that has worked together to create this flower. This is not just a flower, it's a wonder. And that changed, that Dharma talk really fucked me up for the rest of my life. Life literally has never been the same after this moment. Really, 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 because I wasn't able anymore to ignore or escape the fact that everything that surrounds you is a manifestation of everything. Everything is in a continuous modus of change. And if you accept this part, you also see that life is a living system. It's in a continuous flow. It continuously changes. It continuously moves, and we as individuals are not above this system. We are the system. It grows. It goes through us as individuals as well. We are change as well. We are systematic as well, and that acknowledgement is, I think, the big mind shift that we need to make. What Joanna Macy calls the great turning. So if we acknowledge the fact that life is systematic, then our only purpose, our only role, our only goal in life is to sustain life, to regenerate life, to serve life. And that is something completely and utterly different than serving the economy, which is what we're doing at this moment.
Yeah, it requires us then to move from identifying ourselves as a production element, a production facility, to part of an ecosystem. Because when you speak about that beautiful story about the flower, that holds the same for us ourselves, of course, as well. Can I see within you all the nourishing parts from nature that you have taken upon, that you've taken in? That might be one of the most radical ideas to transform society and our economy, the way we work, the way we conduct life in general, of course. Yet, such a simple wisdom. How do we learn? How do we? Well, the obvious idea is to educate. So start at an early age, right, with young children to teach them how they are part of a bigger system. The adults have the biggest say in how we move forward from now, from today and tomorrow in this crisis.
Yeah.
Is there time to wake up this kind of consciousness? And how do we do that?
Well, that's a good question. Well, let's start with the positive. Yeah? Yes. I think the flower example I just shared with you is very simple. I mean, everybody can get the message. Mm-hmm. It's not rocket science. It's actually it's a lot simpler, for instance, than to study I don't know, law or physics. It's very, very fucking simple, actually. I think the hard bit is our ego, because if we acknowledge the fact that we are not unique, but part of a system, that our role is not to control the biosphere, but to serve it, then that demands that we say goodbye to everything that we consider natural. It's not natural, it's normal. There's a big difference between natural and normal. But the way that we experience it is natural. We think that the way that our current society works is natural. A lot of people think that capitalism is natural, that this is just the way that people work. People are only interested in their own needs and their own winning and their own blah, 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 blah. So by getting away of that belief system is doing away with everything that creates clarity and direction for us as a species at this moment. And I think that is the real challenge. So I don't think the challenge is from an information or data perspective, because the information, the message is actually quite simple. I think the hard bit is to acknowledge and to accept the tremendous difference it will create in the way that we run our life. Because if you look at the current way that we treat life, is the way that we treat the economy, the way that we treat other countries, the way that we treat other races. That is, we create duality. Mm-hmm. We create winners and losers. We create wealth and we create poverty. We create sustainability and we have unsustainability. It's all dualistic. But the fact is that if you zoom out and take the Earth shot, you see that there is but only one system. There's only one Earth. I mean, countries, races, sexuality, they're all illusions that we have created to make sense of the place that we live, to make sense of life as it is. And to rearrange that story is so fundamental. And I really, really, really hope that we are able to see that. I think the news story makes life a lot more interesting, rewarding, and I think it's a very positive story. A lot of people beg to differ. A lot of people think this life is very comfortable, that this makes sense, that trying to be a winner is, gives life meaning and direction. And look at America. I mean, it's the country is falling apart. It has all the characteristics of a third world country, of a developed country, and people are actually going on the street to demand the economy from taking off. So we have a country that says, fuck health. We need the economy and we need the money. That is just downright sick. But I think underneath that symptom is panic, is fear, is despair of not being able to let go of what we consider natural. I need money. I need success. I need to be somebody. I need to get out of my misery. I need to end suffering. I need to control my life. I need to control the system. It's all, conditioned.
Yeah. And it's also very local in that sense. The stories have a local characteristic. There's or a national characteristic. So there's a collective story for America. There's a collective story for the Netherlands. We move from different kinds of stories, of course. what I really find interesting about this idea of moving from or working on the story is that it allows us beyond this regional characterization. It allows us to address a universal question, which is which applies to everybody: is what world do we want to live in? And that kind of helps to transcend the idea of what do I want to survive, to what do I need to live or to thrive. What would be you just mentioned it would be interesting, rewarding, and positive. Can you speak a little bit more about the world that you would like to live in?
Well, I didn't co-found Thrive Institute for nothing. So I truly, deeply believe in thrivability, which is something completely different than sustainability, because sustainability is doing business as usual with trying to harm the biosphere as less as possible. So it's less harm. Thrivability is actually getting rid of business as usual and create a new system that acknowledging the fact that a company or an organization isn't only meant to create profit, but can also create benefit and merit. So a company can also create societal and personal profit rather than only financial profit. And by acknowledging that, the importance of money, wealth becomes less important. So if you acknowledge the fact that your life, the purpose of your life, is to sustain or to regenerate or enhance the quality of life, which is the quality of the living system in this planet, then there are a lot more interesting ways to do it than only make sure that your company is solvable. Is that you make a profit. Making a profit is actually only a means to create that bigger end, which is help humanity or help the living planet forward. Mm-hmm. So this is also the reason why I still very fondly and proudly use the word purpose and purpose economy, although a lot of companies don't really understand what purpose is all about. So they have purposes on the website, thinking that purpose means that you show your societal engagement as a company, which is well meant, but it's bullshit. So what these companies actually do is they show what is meaning for them. So there's a difference between meaning and purpose. So meaning is what happens in the penthouse of the Maslow pyramid, which is about why am I on Earth? What makes me tick? Which is what you're actually doing is you're using the planet and humanity to make sense out of your own life. So you're actually using them to create a sense of meaning for yourself. Purpose is very different. There's only one purpose. So all these companies with different purposes, it's bullshit. There's only one purpose, which is life supporting, life support, life sustainment, life regenerating, life enhancing. That is the only purpose that we have as a species on this planet. If you acknowledge that fact, then there are only two options. You either help the living planet and the living system, or you're hurting it. So if you want to help the living planet, you do everything you do as a person and also professionally to make sure that you create gross positive impact on the planet. And gross positive impact means that you create both profit, benefit, and merit. So you're running a company that is feasible, but you're also integratedly are trying to do the right thing for the living system and the people that are living in that system. So you're not using your company only for your own good, and you don't restrict your company to what we call the market, which is also a story.
Mm-hmm.
You're using your company as an entity on this living planet that is part of a system as well, and that is either a positive influence on the system or a negative influence on the system. And I really think that that makes life and also your professional life a lot more interesting, because it's not only important, vital to play a positive role. It's also, once you become aware of the simplicity of the system, which is you either help it or you hurt it, then it also becomes natural to start serving it. Mm-hmm. Really natural, like not like normal natural, which is delusional natural, but really natural. Mm-hmm. And that is why purpose is also such a profound experience. People treat it as a verb. It's not a verb. It's an experience. It's a sensation. Purpose, it's a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. And the reason why you feel purpose down here in your stomach is because it's primal. It's primal. It brings us back to our ancestors, who were hunters-gatherers and lived among the system. They don't have an economy. They served the group. And they respected their natural environment. Mm-hmm. So purpose is primal. Mm-hmm. It's not a vet of the month. Mm-hmm. It's not you.
So if we reframe the role of companies and organizations as vehicles for sustaining and reinforcing life, then why do we need to still be talking about profits? When do we move to talking about value?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I think that we can also lose that lingo. I think profit is a story as well. So yes, I think we can find other words to guide us and to give us direction in what we're doing without using profit. I totally agree. Yeah, I've no idea, because value is also monetarized. Value is also very much perceived as a price tag. Mm-hmm. We value a lot of things in money. So maybe value is also sells the reality too short as well. It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe somebody who's watching can create a new word. We need it.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Although enhancing, making the system flourish and thriving is also something that is creating progress. It is, you are trying to change the current situation into a future situation. So I think there is growth in there, or there is bettering in there. It's just not from a traditional quantitative price oriented sort. It's different.
Yeah, it might be an evolutionary process, more than a growth process. What we are speaking now of is we're moving away from sustaining holding on to the language and availing of the language that we have been using in the old economic paradigm to create a new one. So of course we're in uncharted territory. We're looking around and we're seeing, okay, what do we need? What do we want for life? And how do we want the world to be? So of course, yeah, we need new words, new perspectives. Yes, I sometimes wonder if money is the ultimate, um, I don't want to say blockage because it sounds so judgmental, but is maybe the main item that withholds transformation.
Yeah.
Um,
The story behind money, and the story behind money is possession.
yeah,
And the story behind possession is a sense of security.
yeah, yeah, which is
But,
a fundamentally
by the way,
existential.
folks, we have a very special guest here.
Hello.
No.
What do you think about possession?
Can you tell your name?
Yes.
What's your name?
This is Finn.
Hi, Finn.
Zeg maar hi.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, papa, nog even babbelen. Ja, dat is zo. Dankjewel, schat. Dankjewel, schat. Ja, dankjewel.
Oops.
He's bringing me a piece of cake.
Much needed gift from nature.
Yeah.
We were speaking about possession as
Yeah,
the underlying.
so and behind that sense of possession, I think is a sense of security. So if we possess, then we, our lives are safe. We are safe.
Yeah.
We control life.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to get rid of those stories before we are able to find money controversial, so to say.
Yeah.
And so I don't think money is an issue. I'm a big fan of Charles Eisenstein, as you know, and he wrote a fantastic book about the gift economy, in which he basically says money is holy. Let's treat it like that. Yeah. So if we can treat money as a gift, as a way to exchange value in the true sense of the word, it's fantastic. Yeah. What we have done is we've turned it into a god. So it's not about exchanging anymore. It's about possession, and possession is the root of all evil, in my opinion. But then I dare to share that I studied political science and did anarchistic studies. And yes, I feel completely at ease with the big anarchists. So don't take my word for this.
Well, yet you touch upon a very important cultural aspect, and that is insecurity for life. So at some point in time, we have collectively embraced unconsciously the idea that we are not secure in life, that we are not worthy of living in abundance, for example. And as you just mentioned, Charles Eisenstein, he also mentions sharing your talents with the world as a gift to the world, which has always been very inspiring to me. The situation that we are in today, and we were just speaking about it prior to recording this interview, is that for a lot of entrepreneurs, life has become very insecure, almost even impossible to sustain their business and to sustain their livelihood as a result. Of course, for people in countries that have been living on daily wages, this has been their reality for as long as we can remember. So this is not a phenomenon that is just now appearing. Yet here we are, still feeling that insecurity. The story of life being insecure, people not being safe in their livelihood, is a very important story. I think we need to be addressing, and not maybe doing away with just like that. But this needs collective healing. In a certain way.
I think the main reason why Corona has such a huge emotional impact is that it shows us that we are living beings, and living means that we will die. This is that is the biggest fact of life, and I think it is truly universal. That we don't deal with death very well. Death is the enemy, because that means that we don't control life. And I think that the main reason why Corona is impacting us so heavily is the fact that it is a threat to life, and maybe not literally, because if you study the fact, it's a horrible disease. But if you just look at the numbers, I mean, it's not nearly the deadliest virus that is out there. We will probably have more deadly viruses in the next couple of decades. But I think that what is happening now, and I think that is also starting to happen now in the discussion with climate change, is that we connect the dots. So we connect the fact that climate change is not about the planet. It's not about sea level rising. It's not about biodiversity loss. It's about the end of life, our lives. Mm-hmm. And that scares the hell out of us. And that is, and but again, this is what I've been practicing the last 30 years. That feeling will never go away. I mean, that sucks, and it will always sucks. And we will never ever be able to really truly come to peace with that. I think the best that we can do is to get to peace with the fact that we don't get to come to peace with it, by being mindful of our unrest and treat it with compassion. And I think that practice is individually very, very fundamental and soothing. And I think it's also what we need to do collectively. So rather than having a debate about if the science is right about climate change, that whole discussion is a way to escape the beast. And the beast is, we might not survive this. This might be the end of civilization. This might be the end of human beings as a species. We might die. I truly personally think it's a lot more fundamental to go inward and to see how that idea reflects you, rather than creating duality and saying, but maybe climate change is not a fact. I just witnessed a lot of discussion and turmoil about the film Michael Moore just released on Earth Day, Planet of the Humans, and that whole discussion is about this, because he creates a very depressing, harsh look at the so-called green economy and the clean energy movement. And what you see happening is that the whole green movement reacts really pissed off, and starts to fight all sorts of misinformation in the film. But what you don't see happening is trying to get to grasp with the fact that Michael Moore might be right, and that this whole green idea might be just the next delusion that we need to have the idea that we can control and survive this. That there might be a solution for us ending the fossil fuel capacity that we have. That we might have an idea and an initiative to keep on living as we are doing at this moment, and that we feel comfortable with, because his message mainly is we need to degrowth. We live on this planet with way too much people. We're using way too much of the capacities of this planet, and we're on the path of implosion, of suffering. But that, of course, is a tremendously painful, uncomfortable message. So what you see is, and I just saw a review where somebody says, you know, what the film doesn't offer hopium. So this reviewer actually said, you know, hope is an opium. And this is something that I've also learned from Buddhist practice, that hope is just reversed fear.
Yeah.
It's fear, but it has chosen another outlet. You know, by clinging on to hope, you're just trying to deal with fear, rather than looking your fear in the face and acknowledging the fact that you feel scared shit. And I think that this discussion with this movie about Michael Moore is actually in small exactly what is happening now on a universal scale. Is we have to end the easy solutions. We have to end the delusion that we will be able to grow out of an ecological disaster through a growing economy. I mean, what the fuck are you thinking? I mean, we have a problem with economic growth, so let's change more economic growth to solve that problem. No, come on. We need to degrow. Point. You know, this is it, period. This is what we need to do. And degrowth is the enemy of growth, of course. It means that, you know, we need less, you know, less comfort, less money, less career, less success. Oh my God, you know, our ego doesn't like that. So that's why I think it's so in your face at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That sounds like a natural ending to our conversation. Yet I just wanted to reflect, because what you just mentioned now in the last couple of minutes, such a strong testimonial to the fact that we are so desperate to live that we are willing to survive. And in order to survive, we are willing to believe in a false promise that the ideology of capitalism, for example, holds. Yet it falls away at the moment that it really comes to it. So survival and living, which is beyond surviving, of course, appears to me as the biggest opportunity of this time. So do we choose to live and thrive, and then step by step find how to, what is needed for it, and what we can do away with, or what we need to create. Yet our belief in the in the insecurity of life holds us away from that kind of creative capital that we have as human beings, right? What we see now appearing all over is without any theoretical framework. People starting up commons. In every neighborhood, mini commons are being started.
Because those are natural.
Exactly.
They're not normal, they're natural.
They are, that's how we sustain life. So it is.
Yeah, but it's also, sometimes it helps to make stuff that is really big, really small. And maybe this is a great way to end our talk. You know, it really helps to go back to the smallest sense of community that we know as people, which is family. Yeah? So you have a partner and kids, and I have partners and kids, and actually in that community that we call family, most of us, because I know there are exceptions to this rule, but most of us find it utterly normal to live a life which is all about serving the quality of the system. Yes, we need money to keep our families running, but a family is not a company. And nobody dares to think about a family like a company. And if you do, you know, then you are officially sick in the brain. So we know that our families are run on love.
Mhm.
Love our kids. We love them unconditionally, and we do everything we do to help them forward in life. The only thing that we have to do is to treat each and every living being on the planet as family. That is everything we need to do. So if we are able to open up our hearts and not just look at other human beings and other forms of living, animals, the air, the river, if we are able to treat it as family, then we're there. It's that simple. It's that simple. That is, I think, the only storyline that we have to change. I mean, we are all family.
Okay. I think that's a beautiful way to end our conversation.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time, Kees. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.